so yedang guru rana mendra kani ayami sanje chedang soje chanang la chanju bado dane jaso dargui shi yin jiwe chonang ji drola benje sanje druwa sho sanje chedang soje chanang la chanju bado dane dargui ji yin jiwe chonang ji drola benje sanje druwa sho sanje chedang soje chanang la chanju bado dane dargui ji yin jiwe chonang ji drola benje sanje druwa sho la dan la me da me ma ji on bone ja yin la su che che la ja wa che ba na sanje su ba de shi yin de ju je da shi je de me shi yin yin de shi je de me je yin de je sa ve de ju ba ten jin che ba ta la cho de jong go wa de la be ne je shi de su se yin me da an bi da ne la wa tu la tu ve su ne je na ma la ye ka ta lu dan de zhu da da me ye ga na na zhuo wa gu ye zhan na ji za wa su tam je ga do da ge che de do kan gong wo den ju na wo me ba ni de su yi xi ni me san me je ben me te la cha cha lo o ya da na ni ka so de lu ru ge me da dong a dong wa xie cha wa sun bo nan ju ji cho de sem ni zhang je be sem ani che ni ra xin me ba yin chen ni o da song na xie chen ni ra dan di ten da de ge jin ju la song ma na xie chen ni jin ju ge yan la de da tam jan ni tu be xie ra chen ten du song a se tu be xie ra ten ni chen na 아니 가서对安尼写了介绍这怎么说是吧然后这道当然你特别陷入情绪呢希望对呗写了介绍是但是不希望对呗写了介绍的那就看着人谁看了呀真正写了这个然后你他们家呢谁看了没大把的东啊的大美拉巴拉说话아니 진바단 이제라 소와 최대다 아니 좀 된대지 아니 최대다 양소련자 송바데 아니 가소래 아니 장어동만 이도 베셔라 그진데 송바래想了 대다 투는데 아니 대체나 지된다 시원대 베셔라 게지라 아니 대체도 다 가소래 신단 대라 때는 아니 다 아니 동안예와 10월 10일 니 10월 10일 그냥 뭐 시로 교고를 송아 대당 단단 되게 된다 자와 시를 말이 돼 가서래 다들 루즈고 손되게 미다 동아 아니 미다 동아 또 차와 숨보 남수치 세들이 미다 바다 동아다 다다 다메라 봐 오 대다 대박이 아니 영화기 차와 아니 숨보지 정화 차봐 아니 천하 초도 샘 정제대 가르래서나 아니 초도 샘제 전제지 천내라 심해 봐 있어야지 다 된데 대숨 이유보다 전다 지도 저거
So there now there are two verses actually one I think from the letter to a friend and another verse from the introduction to the Bodhisattva's conduct the first one by Master Nagarjuna, the second by Master Shantideva, and the meaning of these comes down to the same basic point. The first verse says that the teachings on impermanence and suffering and charity, generosity and so forth, these all function as factors so as to generate the highest kind of knowledge. And in the second verse it says essentially the same thing, that all of the different practices that the Buddha teaches on the methods side having to do with generosity, the practice of ethical conduct and so forth, all of these practices, both verses come down to the same thing, saying that these are designed to engender within a person the wisdom, understanding the way things are. And what that is that these first kinds of practices, the practice of meditating upon impermanence, meditating upon suffering, or on the side of method side of developing generosity, developing ethical conduct, and so forth. All of these are by developing, and also I have to say, developing an understanding of the absence of a real self in a coarse sense, a basic sense that the self doesn't exist in the way it appears in a rough kind of way. All of these are designed as sort of means by which a person can then eventually develop the direct understanding of the nature of reality, that is emptiness, and that is itself the direct antidote to the misapprehension of the self, which is the root of samsara. And it's only through the development of that wisdom, the highest, supreme form of wisdom, which understands emptiness, that one is able to actually eliminate the root of samsara, the basic misconception that lies at the foundation of samsara, and only through that method that one can achieve then the true peace, which is the true peace here referring to the actual true and complete extinction of all of the mental afflictions.
야, 전에 인상 다 단대 시자wan 되게 아니 단다 자신 시wan 나신 있잖니 알아지 담보 대보 되게 아니 미다바다 동아와 단대 다다도 전바 싸네 아니 잡지 다마 이치마 대보 되게 아니 가서래 쉬라 심해 봐 냥수레베 수제 다도 스탠 거야 말해.
So then that's what has also, same thing is expressed in this 400 verses as well. The first 8 expositions or chapters are treatments of the things like meditating upon impermanence, and on a basic level, impermanence, understanding the suffering nature of things correctly, just on a conventional level, and likewise the understanding of the things that appear to us as being pure are actually have a basic nature of being impure. These are all operating on the conventional level, but these are adjuncts or means by which one can eventually be led into a understanding of the true nature of reality, emptiness, which is focused upon in the second half of the text, the last 8 expositions or chapters.
아니 통만에 안에 가서 내려다가 마담바 아니 내려라 봐 TV치도 아니 지소 점지 로주된 돼 다다나 되는 연구사래 시와 통만이네 내려지 된다바 차와 마인바 담바 마인바 아니 다시 공도 셔바나 신체니 사모 통만이라 마 TV치베 타가 되니다 연락되다 소야진 하시 전에 김밥매라 마송시 라송시 진라 초림 김밥매라 라송제 진라 초림 송바데 초라 시와 송주바 대나다도 초도 쳐세 오다 임바신도 전에가 코세비 아니 타와 텐도니와 차와 이나
La kenla. Do we do 188? No, la me. Sumba. Kola nyemik shindu chewe tarpala big ripa. Sumba.
Sumba de 왜?
Kola nyemik shindu.
나 초자 개비도.
I jumped.
sumba kola yime shindu cheba tabalan beribani lala dunga sene shin chura deba tananje tete teta timu che komban tamba mendo se o da dire ro 가르쳐 그래서나 신 왕주 첨부 남 유지 대화라 차네 아니 침봉하다 뭔가 타바 추비치데 배바 미니장 아니 내다 오와라 소와 동아지 시와 타 코와라 가와 토아르데세요 토아르데세 아니 가서라라 우와당 아니 동화단 차와라 소위 세가라 아니 동화단 차와라 소와기 아니 동화기 아니 세지나 봐 대라 라라 동화 세내신 대래 안에 탑이 쳐도 대체 말에 매당 출주바탕 양도 좋아라 소와 아니 라니 치워도 바탕 안데 치워라 되바 타나데 치워 되바 타나데 개코나다 코알라 동아도 내와를 체네 나라 차바 빠나 타비데와 유도 토바 시나 대체 대다라 랑도 뜨무 시에지 왜 진양아래 되요 그만 담바 미조와 세도
So next, it seemed like we'd covered some of this material before, but this actual verse, I don't think we had gone over that yet, had we? No. So here then it says, this is dealing with the why it's necessary, it's proper to exert oneself to achieve liberation by recognition, seeing that the negative consequences of samsara are extremely heavy, and this is given in verse 188. The rich and powerful who are attached to the pleasure they derive from things may not be able to give up their homes and strive in seclusion to attain liberation. However, it is surely fitting for those afflicted by sickness and poverty to give up their attraction to samsara. And then the verse says, one sees that some who are overwhelmed by suffering long for death, yet entirely due to their confusion, they will not reach the excellent state, the best state of existence. Some people who are overwhelmed by the suffering of poverty, of being separated from what is dear to them and the like, long to die by leaping into fire, water, or into an abyss and so forth in order to gain release. In exactly the same way, by gaining certainty concerning the suffering of samsara and abandoning attachment to the self, misapprehension of the self, or attachment to the self, they could quickly attain the happiness of liberation. But entirely due to their extreme confusion about what to take up, what to adopt, and what to discard, what to get rid of, they will not reach the excellent state of nirvana.
Oh yeah. That bena never kashi me madu wa nela midro wa shindu. Ni mongo ju wa junse ane chadang la so wa ni mongo ju wa junse siji ne na yang ni mongo saben chung ma jin ba la ane saben chung jin bi yin bo ma dan ba la ane saben bo mi de wa yin za ane ko la me ta wo.
So the example analogy here is, without taking the medicine, a patient will not be cured of his or her illness. Similarly, even if one suppresses the manifest forms of the mental afflictions to some extent, one will not gain liberation from samsara except by employing the antidote which completely eradicates them.
Oh yeah. That is Jimba member la song de, Dilla to do song by day, Chola she was song jo, but Tanata to shot to chairs. Course be Taba Tendunya Wachawa Yina, Koyu Dunganya or Shabaka, and Taba Tendunya Wachawajina. Ani Taba Tender with Dunganya or Shivi, Taba Tobi, Shidu, Tekwana, Yukombe, Tamkwana, Chawa Richi, Dembe Jimbadang, Chudumji, Tamtajan Jaba Jishena.
So then here next comes the point that it's not appropriate, one should not teach the meaning of reality, here referring to emptiness, right from the start, from the very beginning. And then someone might say, well, if one is to strive for the liberation which ends samsara, advice only about meditation on, she says, suchness or reality, I'm using reality for this same thing, would be appropriate. Or suchness is another word for emptiness, would be appropriate. Why did the teacher, the Lord Buddha, also give advice on generosity and ethical conduct? And then the verse here explains that giving is taught to the lowest, and ethics to the middling, ethical discipline to the middling. Pacification is taught to the best, therefore always do the best.
Oh yeah. Anita Kasore. Do me this, Abo Membatang, Ani or Timbatang, Ani Rimji, Rabji Eve, Ani Rimji Chimachako, Membala, Rishi and Tombatanumazova Chimbatang, and Dilla Tsujumtang, Ani Chola, and Tomachi Swadi Zergo, to a Chakode, Teta Toma Chimbatam Nuji, Ani or Sudu Yanda was so a Minuatella Chimbitam Chavatang. 진비담 안부 멤버라 송신 레시 추중 공부는 멤비시로 대tenda와지 진발안에 심바 안부 드는데라 아니 내가 저번 거 추루송아 하다 미개와 그네도 좋아 인상 삼미개기 아니 가서래 유라 추좀 고와 인상 계산남 영화래보다 우리균이 수들에 셈매 전송하나 시전에 아니도 주의 새로 다 아무 초라고 구의시와 탑 대담 대관한 요건에 짬做了 送把 주라 좋더라 되나 타바토나 나 타바토나 지마로 냠도 다도 초도 주와学习
So then the explanation for there's no fault in the fact that Lord Buddha did not teach reality or emptiness just right off the bat from the beginning. That fault doesn't obtain. And it says here, let's see, initially, therefore, they should be taught about virtuous. I'm sorry, I jumped. One must lead others gradually, distinguishing between those of least, intermediate, and best ability or capacity. One could also ability or capacity. Advice about generosity or giving is for those who are at first capable only of generosity, but cannot give up killing and so forth. So for people like that, they have to be given advice on generosity. Thus, advice on generosity or giving is directed to those of the least ability who, for the time being, are not ready to practice ethical discipline and meditation. So those of intermediate ability are already practicing generosity. They are taught about ethical discipline. So, here it says, since they are ready to take birth as gods or humans. I'm not sure if that's exactly right. It probably is more like that through by giving advice on generosity at the beginning, then a person can be gradually developed over maybe a course of lifetimes to eventually develop within themselves the capacity to develop ethical discipline. Once one is able to develop ethical discipline, then they're going to be able to continually take rebirth as gods or humans, which it serves as a basis for them to be able to develop further. And then those with the best ability are principally instructed on meditation on suchness or reality emptiness, the actual direct means to cause samsara to be pacified. And so what that's saying there is that a person has to have been established in ethical discipline as a basis in order to be able to develop within themselves meditation on emptiness, and which is the direct antidote for samsaric existence. Without having ethical discipline as a foundation, there's no way to develop this understanding of emptiness, which will be the means. Therefore, thus one should always endeavor to, here it says, do the best. I would say be the best, make oneself the best, and think, why shouldn't I attain liberation?
허야 내가 가서 이제 주민나라 다자와다 치다고 이게 치모로 줘 디시산제 두자라 치점 준비 최대도 가지라니 이대마 가지라니 이메데 사모 구르 전제 봐 돈이 인지 인보제 소나시 전에 이게 로바나시 전에 담보 안에 가가네 봐 마신도 되니 다 여봤다 되니 다 매봤다 되니 순지 이동 치료 텐도 좋았다 되니 치료 텐도 매봤다 되니 라시 매봤다 림지 치와나시 전에 다 대단도 지버린 거예요.
The verse here it has the same basic intention of what we find in the Precious Garland, where Master Nagarjuna said that a skilled teacher is just like someone who's instructing someone or the Buddha is similar to a skilled language teacher who begins by introducing the students to the alphabet. A grammar or language teacher doesn't start off with advanced subjects first. If they don't know the alphabet, then of course they can't read anything. They don't know the language. So the skilled grammar teacher or language teacher begins by teaching people the alphabet, their students the alphabet, and then gradually leads them into more complicated forms of the language. Just like that, Lord Buddha begins by teaching basic topics, and in terms of the instruction on reality specifically, Lord Buddha begins by teaching people, some cases he'll even teach them that there's a real self, that the self exists, there's a real eternal self. For others then who've gone beyond that, he'll show them selflessness in the coarse sense, that there's no permanent unitary autonomous self in a basic sense. And then but still based on the belief that the components of the self were they're real things that exist within the world. Then beyond that he'll go further and show like for example that they're real, that objects are established in a real fashion. There's some kind of irreducible basis for objects. Then he'll go beyond that, a higher level, showing that external objects don't exist as they appear, therefore everything is of the nature of mind, that view of reality. And then finally arriving at the point where it teaches that neither internal nor external objects exist as they appear. They're not real in the way that they appear to us, so they're unreal, and that teaching on emptiness is then given after one has progressed through understanding of these different levels of instruction.
Oh yeah, pena jao bu jao yu pu sum na sum ane na zhe le de de ya sum de ji le yi ge tang ji le zai dan ji dan ba tang sum ba la chen jia ta dan ba xin o ka sa ji le yang te ren yi dan ba cha wa yi ba du jia ji wi ane ren ba la kha wa cha yu ten o.
So the analogy that's given for this is according to their ages. A king had 3 sons. So the youngest son is taught the alphabet, how to recite the alphabet. The second is taught how to, she says, recite, learn, study a grammar text. And then the third treatise on the use of weapons, on how to use weapons. So this is what it means to be knowledgeable about the stages by which disciples, those who are to be trained, students, are led, since one person must be taught everything in a gradual sequence.
Oh yeah, that is la. Kasa ji la yang, that is ma shi dan ba che ge, ra. 就其中给咱们人机蛋白囊形成蛋白囊蛋白切话一面都在这位人把那开发的切位很多是这的，但是我其他这位人把你说了明白谈不多，把都当年多把谈，他们大学滚多把，现在没有那7年多把滚多把，看个些的，俺那开发营是我们爬营开发营是呀都现在的的送多。 那对了，你看说的日系，天气电文那都没用完了，是什么东西你电文那都没用完了，你电了，什么电文你都没用完了，那电了，你他看说的，连着了关对不对？你让人家说的叫我个准，是吧？连着让西面把电对开了，连着没把大哥哥印章。 日系参与电文那都没用完了，但那切他到了过啊当年，你给的来切把，给的来切把没把写的是，你把钱呢按照做印章，是吧？我听着我的了，你他妈看着人山大要把它怎么的？你俺说那么一把他不多呗，是每个月来多把钱是，而且早写着的就有吧。 我看是大国学家大九节，大美节讲蛋白讲，我们今年说3节节你的大美，你看大国学家大学这大美节天天白的，3节你提起3节那么你大美，你看蛋晒的大地嘛的，我听着我听了，大国学家大九节是的大队要把它咱们呢，你我。 刚说的，说那么一笔来帮过来的，蛋的了，说那明白谈不到。
So the next point is the stages by which one leads disciples, how one ought to lead disciples through the different stages of understanding this. And so here it says that first one needs to turn them away from non-meritorious behavior. In the middle, after that, in the middle, one needs to turn them away from the notion of self. And then finally, at the end, one needs to turn them away from all views. Literally, it says all views here. And one who understands that is a skilled or wise instructor. And so here at the very beginning, if one teaches reality to someone who's not a suitable recipient of it, a suitable vessel for the teaching on reality, then they'll come to the conclusion that actions and their agents and actions are entirely non-existent. They'll fall into a nihilistic view out of underestimation of the actual existence of agents and actions. That is, this is referring here to, especially to karma and its results. One will come to think that karma, well, if everything's empty, then karma and its results don't make any difference. There's nothing about them that's real. So therefore, why should, I don't have to worry about karma and its results. So you come to that kind of conclusion, thinking that that actions and agents are completely irrelevant, and disparage them in that way. And one will come to the conclusion out of this misconception about emptiness that it entails a sort of nihilistic view in which there's no difference between virtue and sin, or negative actions, virtuous and sinful or negative actions. And one will, out of that misconception, then one will engage in wicked, evil actions, and will go into the lower evil destinies, be born into hell and so forth. That being the case, at the very beginning, one needs to instruct such persons in the way in which virtuous and non-virtuous karma or action functions as cause and effect. That is, the virtuous actions give rise to happiness, non-virtuous actions give rise to suffering, and one needs to teach that in a way that's easy for people to understand in a basic sense, as if karma and its effects were real, existed by means of their own intrinsic nature, had some kind of essence or intrinsic nature to them. And so that's essential to do at the very beginning. And then 그래서 통을 게임이길래 드리블 때는 독라we 수는 멤버 띠플을 주포
저는 멤버 다음부터 그래서
and so thus what one needs to do is teach them at the very beginning how to turn away from engaging in evil actions which are non-meritorious, and because that's the proper occasion for doing that kind of thing. So this is just like it's also said in the basic verses on wisdom. Master Nagarjuna said the Buddhists sometimes they teach the self, the existence of a real self. So for some people they have to think, I really exist as the way I appear. Essentially, there's a real I, and that I is what is going to experience happiness in the future if I do some virtuous action now. So the Buddha teaches that as an expedient initially at times, but then he also teaches the absence of a real self to those who are suitable to hear it.
Oh yeah. 다여봐라 짬네 다여봐 짬네 되니 개미기길래 미기वे라 남이 지대고 아니 동아 중수 셰베 아니 동아지도 아니 가서래 소나 마임바 미게와라 줘봐지 아니 담보 도봐 잡아들라야 소나 멤버 담보 도고 세대당 아니 자와시라기 아니 다고시자 다주지 세대다 지바제 말에 자 아니 뒤제라 다음에 제장 땜바차 세대 자와시라 그 다음에 제장 땜바차 세가라 된다와디 림바이와라 되니다 가서래 다음에 라바티 베네도 주디 잠바 아니 되니 가라 아니 가서래 풍보다 라자 뒤에 자유 그만 바다메라 봐 내가 순대 가라 되니 가서 봐야지 봐도 풍보다 나방아 제비거나 지소라 따위 지다 따와 니시 현유 간에서 다 라자 뒤에 자유라서 왜 지다 니시 어 군다 뒤서 그 현유 간에 라비 다네 도바탕 라비 다네 도바 제가라 되니 딜딜라 파도 다네 도바탕 세다 자와시라라 다음에 제장 땜바차 세다 직접 주버인 바래
So then in the middle period, so in the initial period, then the Buddha will teach the existence of a real self to people who need that in order to avoid falling into a nihilistic view. And so they think, I want happiness in the future, and once they understand that in order for me to get happiness in the future, I need to avoid engaging in non-meritorious evil actions, then they'll turn away from those evil actions and turn towards virtue out of an apprehension of themselves like a real I or self, thinking I'll be happy in the future, therefore I have to do virtuous things and avoid non-virtuous things. So the Buddha teaches that existence of a real self to people in that stage. Then in the intermediate period, he teaches, and here the commentary says, by means of an analysis of the fivefold analysis of the aggregates. Here it's saying that in the intermediate period, people think that come to understand that the self doesn't exist as a self-sufficient substance. This is a coarse understanding of the nature of selflessness, absence of a real self. That by analyzing the aggregates, the relationship between the self and the aggregates, they come to understand that the self does not exist as a self-sufficient substance, that it exists relationally to the aggregates, which are its basis of designation. They gain a basic or coarse understanding of that. And then in that way, they're able to negate the conceived object of the 20 sort of wrong views that pertain to the wrong view of viewing the collection of the aggregates as being real. This is usually translated as the wrong view of the transitory collection, viewing the aggregates as being real, and so that analysis of the relationship between the self and the aggregates enables one to negate the apprehended object of this wrong view that considers the aggregates and the self to be real in a coarse sense, and by that way one's able to turn away from the coarse form of the self as existing as a unitary, autonomous, eternal or permanent sort of entity, or a substantially existent self in the coarse level of analysis.
Oh yeah, that is it. 大国学讲大学去，咱们就讲是提起三件那么的，你提起三件那么你打咱们你个蛋谁干了？我你提了，话说嘞，你个蛋谁干了？就那种我提了，他说俺那打都没把蛋。 是吧？你种的全提起三年了，俺打的那都没容易，就在这了，俺打当那都容易就在这了，俺打没把你个单提起三件那么紧呢，打没你个单在这样啊，7年打我工作把康个写的怕对应，在这他就把人在这，然后
So then at the end, then after a person has gone through these stages, starting out by thinking there's a real self, next understanding that the self doesn't exist as it appears in a rough, coarse way, that is gaining some degree of insight into the fact that the I or self's relationship with the aggregates that are its basis of designation doesn't exist as it just naively appears to us. Rather, it doesn't exist as a self-sufficient self-sufficient substance. It doesn't exist as a unitary, autonomous, eternal or permanent thing. Those rough levels of understanding selflessness. Then once a person has gone through that and become a suitable vessel for understanding it, their mental continuum has been developed so that they can be a suitable vessel for it. Then Lord Buddha instructs in the selflessness of the person, and here in the subtler sense of the selflessness of the person. So thus this section of the text illustrates what we heard from the basic verses of wisdom, that the Buddha teaches both the self and teaches selflessness as well.
Oh yeah, because他这些到贵对为人把看给写完的，对这这为人把他了看完一脑钱啊，完了他就看说的，那你的看说的，这家也要人把这看说的，就不300个先把写着了，300个先把写拿了，吃的了先呢吃完没，考了先呢挨住没，答对了先呢强生没。怎么去那到我们在台上俺地家要人把的，我说的，吃的了现在吃我没人，是吧？考了现在你就没人，是吧？俺你答对了现在强生没人，怎么去那到我们？大家怎么去那到我们？他们，我台上家有他也没个下去，说不就下去呀。
So then next, so the Buddha teaches, and likewise, when we talk about at the final level, or in the root text here, it says later the Buddha teaches an instructor who's instructing in this instruction would show the elimination or turning away from all views. Here, that refers to shows the disciple or student how to attain correct view, which is the elimination of all wrong views. That is, and so that's equivalent to an understanding of the subtle form of selflessness. Here, the subtle form of this selflessness of the person is showing that even selflessness itself, the absence of a self, is shown to be unreal. That is, it doesn't exist in some kind of autonomous, or selflessness itself does not exist in some kind of autonomous, real way, existing by means of its own intrinsic nature. So that has to be shown. And by means of that, then one is able to turn away all of the views which grasp at things in an extreme fashion. Here, one can apply the instruction that is given by Master Sakyapandita. Master Sakyapandita said that if you're attached to this world, you're not a Dharma practitioner. If you're if you're attached to this life, if you're attached to this, you're not a Dharma practitioner. If you're attached,
吃的了现在吃我没人是看了，算了没人比来了，啥都讲了，俺你看说的，俺这街就搞多个没有，吃这么点没多少人啥，吃的了现在吃我没人是，俺你考了现在我就没人是，考完了现在考了我这边我就接什么吧。
So and if you're attached to, so the first one is if you're attached to this life, you're not a Dharma practitioner. That means if you're attached to this life alone, then if all you care about is this life, then you'll mostly create negative virtue, negative actions, non-virtue, and will almost certainly fall into a lower state of existence in the next life. And so then the next point is that if you're attached to samsara, you don't have renunciation. You don't have renunciation. Third point is if you're only interested in your own objectives, then you don't have bodhicitta. You're not a follower of the Mahayana. And if you're, then the final one is if you're
比如说打断了现在强生命，然后接我的珍宝，让你接不，当你接不接我的珍宝，俺你真正给王祖算了，俺你强生没人吧？俺你怎么去那到我没人谁干了？当然， 가서를 다른 당신 차라기 나도 주와 차라지는 따와면서 쪼어들랑 시지 주와 전에 따와면 봐.
So then the third point is that if you care only about yourself, you esteem yourself above all others, and your whole objective is self-interest. You're only concerned with your own well-being, and that's it. Then you don't have bodhicitta. There's no bodhicitta. And then the third point is that if you have any kind of apprehension of anything, then you don't have the view. This final point here saying if you apprehend anything, meaning you grasp at it, you cling to it in a sort of grasping fashion. That is, especially if you grasp at any kind of notion of the self, then you don't have the view. So it's even grasping at or clinging to the idea of absence of intrinsic existence is itself evidence that one has not gotten the view.
나지 배라 멤버 캐베 네발라 자주당 numje nazo chaba shino ta kasan toso dera 멤버 캐바게 네바게 내지 추당 안테 뛰인데 만지 추거와 나신체네.
So then the example, the last line of that is that thus someone who knows these stages of training, how to train disciples in that way and lead the disciples in that way, is someone who is wise here, or skilled, one could say skilled. And so the example that's given here is that a skilled physician evaluates the illness that the person is suffering from and gives them various kinds of treatments. Like at times they'll give them food that's very bland, and other times they'll give them rich foods that have a lot of oil and stuff in it.
Oh yeah, Right? Rango Moya Majuba, Che Tamja Rango Moya Majuba, Evam, Gaja, Rashi, Trua, Gasamji, Megata, Tony Terwa, Ota Contenda, Rashi may be all like Eva Meba. Tesha Badella, O Chig Tao, Tenekunja Tao Yin. Chig Tony Kang, but Tenekunja Tony Yin, said the career as a Chig, Rashi Tom, but the dead Watermalo Jana, Tabilam Kang Topjana, Talam Topje de Lam Carre, Sena, O Tamja Rashi Truba Tombale, Anita Tabatoba, Mobo Taya Be, Chunijan Taya Be Series. 我太也把一家千女长，我比长大年吧，太也把要把一张，俺那太他到熟悉给俺那写完女，太也把一张熟悉给写完女，确信马写信马帮呗，俺那他把他们那边门那边样送所写呐，
So the next point is showing how it is that there's no differentiation in the basic character, in the in the basic character of things with respect to the final status of the way they actually exist. This refers to everything, and this is referring then to emptiness as the final nature of things, and it's a mere negation, a simple negation with not something that implies something existing in addition to it. So it's a simple negation, and that is given in this next verse. And here it says that one who sees a single thing, thing here can be construed as either it can be construed as the word thing or entity is used in two connotations. One in which it's referring exclusively to products or things which are created by causes and conditions, but there's another connotation of entity or thing which entails both the inclusion of both produced things or created things as well as uncreated things like space and so forth, and emptiness is also an uncreated thing. So whoever that which is the viewer of a single thing is explained as being viewing or seeing everything. And then the last two lines of that says the emptiness of one thing is the emptiness of all. That's the emptiness of all. And so then someone might say, well, how is one to achieve, by what means of what path is one to achieve liberation? And then the answer to that is through understanding emptiness, which is the absence of not just. So it's from understanding that all things, and here things refers to both created and uncreated things, are empty or devoid of being established by means of their own intrinsic nature. So then someone might say, well, that things are limitless. There's no limit to things. And then that being the case, then their basic reality here, I think Ruth is, what does Ruth use for that? What is Ruth?
Oh, yeah.
No, again, that's Guru. No. She used, I can't remember what she used, but anyway, the word here is dharmata or chuni, which means the basic nature of things. It's another synonym for emptiness, is limitless, and therefore the person here is saying, who can know all of that, the entirety of that? And that being the case, if one 추측 마시신 마방발 타바토 민누발 양숨배서
추측 마시신 마방발 타바토 민누발 추측 마시신 세라 아니 추측이 덴바덴베 덴진 마방발 타바토 민누발 숨바서 셴나. So
then the opponent here is saying, well, isn't it the case that the Buddha has taught us that if we don't know, if there's a single phenomena that we don't understand and get rid of, meaning here understanding of the intrinsic existence or something, then we wouldn't be able to achieve liberation. So someone might say that.
아니 오군지 천이 따오 보세세 가나 결한기 가사라시면 또 별로 다가라기 아니 오군지라시면 또 봤다 또 받아 말이디 아니 말 가사라시면 또비 주제디 아니 현라봐我前几天都全把咱们的按我这单提按천이 따와 봐 통화 인장 아니我这个我这个让星期出来多边那路따와 봐 되니我估计천이 따와 봐现在是得什么
So that objection doesn't apply. The fault that the person is raising here doesn't obtain, and the reason for that is that when one that which is a viewer of the way things are, which is of a single thing. A single thing is if once one views the way it exists, which is being devoid of being established by means of its own intrinsic nature, then such a person, or one could here say cognition, which is viewing that, is a cognition which views the dharmata, the base chuni or basic nature of all things. So what this line entails is that through understanding the emptiness of a single thing, the evidence or proof that establishes that thing is empty can be applied to any other thing that exists, and in that proof or means of establishing that as empty can be applied equally to all other things that exist, and thus in that way one is able to establish the emptiness of all things through the ascertainment of the emptiness of a single thing.
탐제 세조지 지기 탐제 통화 주로서 다 대다 다시 나시와나신 가사라시 매바 또베 로지보 되게 가사라시 매바 체명해와나 아니 가사라시 매바 내 지기 근전 대다라 때네 두제 현계버 거마고 봐 아니 탐제 그 딩기 아니 춘이 세와 좋아다 춘이 통화 좋아
So this is given likewise a sutra citation to as evidence for this in the Samadhi Raja or King of Meditative Concentration Sutra. It says by a single by a single thing one can know everything, and one can understand everything. By a single thing one can see everything, is what the sutra passage says. What that is referring to, then, it's like once one has ascertained the absence of intrinsic existence with respect to a single thing or entity, like, say, the self. Once one understands the absence of intrinsic nature and intrinsic existence of the self, then without having to engage in a whole lot of extensive analysis or reasoning, you can apply that same understanding to any other kind of thing, and in that way one is able to understand the emptiness, absence of intrinsic nature. The term that's the basic nature, dharmata, or the basic nature, again synonym for emptiness of any other thing.
我也提醒都看跟我去提醒你懂我提醒我提醒你都通是。是吧？但这了所谓日巴个，但这了所谓，俺那日巴养大了，但呢，我这干啥到我上学去买不通了。俺那天这但这个日巴太了，但那样我先归讲，俺那上学去买不通啊，就把人家看跟我去提醒你通啊，提醒我跟提醒你都通是，他就把人买的。
啊，
看跟我去提醒你通啊，这个军站看给你。但今这我就为军站了，但呢，看啥到我让些去买把让些去注意我们把通看见我去，我看啥个让太可能也通完提示，我通完提给我就是把提了，但呢我估计啊让些没把通过这是看给我去提醒你通啊，提醒我跟提醒你通是。This
is exactly the same thing as said elsewhere, where it says that by which one understands the reality, again here it's suchness or tatata of things, the reality of things. One can know the reality of any other thing as well. This is in reference to especially if when we employ the evidence or reason of dependent origination. Like, for example, if we take the case of the self or person, we can establish that the self or person is empty, devoid of intrinsic existence because it is a dependent origination. So dependent origination there is the evidence or reason or proof, evidence basically, that establishes the absence of intrinsic existence with respect to that subject, the person or I or self. And once one has done that, then without having to engage in a whole lot of elaborate reasoning, then one can apply the same evidence, that is dependent origination. Everything is dependently originated. Once one can see that some other thing is a dependent origination, then that thing one can also is evident, can be inferred to be devoid of intrinsic nature, that one can come to understand its basic nature or reality.
Oh yeah, 当初的俺的对吧，多对不拿来呀？大气掌握，汽车什间他们这些，什间他们这现在全国些是吧？大气掌握，汽车什间他们这些是干了，大上些人买吧，写我太当着哇，太当的，大气掌握，汽车听着哦。아니 심지어 탐제라 셔봐 다 다진데 집어도 지래 와
심지어 탐제라 셔봐
다지자와 된다 다 가세라 다지자와 진짜 된다 심지어 탐제시 다 조마서 이슈야 이슈 집어내다.
There's another verse from the verse summary of the Perfection of Wisdom, which says something to the effect of by understanding the self, one can understand all sentient beings in the same way. It comes down to the same point.
나 랑시지 매바 시라와 텐라와 아니 섬자 탐제야 랑시지 매바 바시 그래.
So, what that means is that by understanding oneself as being devoid of intrinsic existence, not existing or being established by means of some intrinsic nature or intrinsic existence, then one can equally understand all sentient beings are devoid of, they're not established by means of some kind of intrinsic nature or intrinsic existence.
섬자 탐제 랑시지 매바 친자 텐라와데 아니 최군라 마시 제가나 다 오지기 땅바진에서나 아니다
So likewise then, by understanding that all sentient beings are devoid of intrinsic existence, one can then apply that to all phenomena. Everything is devoid of intrinsic existence. By understanding the initial understanding of emptiness, then can be applied to all sentient beings, and then finally to all phenomena.
다데 나가 저기 아니 딩게 가라 강그 최지권에 최남 그시 최지 아니 나라라시메 봐 주마다고 통화티라 통나 강지 최지권에 최남 그 주마 미주 다시 송메라 세어다 주마다 미주처럼 김에대신 달라도 맞아 미주 최나야 추만 맞주바 만나 치를 맞주바 나신 최dom제 라시지 주와나야 라시지 아니 맞주바 다들 송구에 말해.
So then there's another passage cited from Sutra. Here it's the Aryadeva Samadhi Sutra, the noble sutra on the meditative concentration, which is like a treasury of space. Treasury of space is, I think, the name of that samadhi, or that meditative concentration. And so here it says that that by which we understand a single phenomenon, we can understand all phenomena, all things that exist, and and by means of that, one understands that they're like magical illusions, they're like mirages, and they're unapprehendable. They can't be apprehended. So here, a magical illusion refers to the fact that, like, if a elephant or horse has been conjured up by a magician, the appearance of one, it's not a real elephant or real horse. And similarly with a mirage, it appears like it's water, but there's no actual water to be found within the mirage.
Oh yeah. That is just about that. 자소 추득지 통배 자소 그 추득지 통배 아니 현남라는 자소 그 추강가 란자인 바 시와나 시르치 추득바지 통바기 자지 추탐제 란자인 바 란자 잔로 아 차고 잔로 시와나 신我这个当你看人吧，天天根据当把你的，这个我经济我这让些就当把的，反正我学他们这个一个让些就当把的，让些就当把的，是吧？我这个当你的学他们这个当你是个嘛是吧？我这个让些就当把看人吧的，我根据让些就我根据让些就当把的你的，让些就当把的，
So then there's another citation here. I think it's given as prose in the translation, but I think it's a verse. At least that's the way it's printed here in the text, the Tibetan text. And it says, for example, by drinking a single drop of the ocean's water, one can understand that all of the other drops are salty. Just like that, by understanding the emptiness of a single thing, one can understand the emptiness of all other things. Here we have to be a little careful, because it's not the case that the emptiness of a single thing is the emptiness of all things. That's not what is being said. It's saying that the emptiness of a single thing, by means of understanding the emptiness of a single thing, one can understand the emptiness of all things.
Oh yeah. 真的，我这个当年看陪过当年谁干了，联动天意，联办当月当把天意，联动天意全国人南路堂是吧？全国人南路堂，但是我说 내동대 체육군 안에라 내배동에 동바레스 그거래 라고 대기다 내동대 체육군 인내로당한테 내동대 체육군 내배동아레스 제 내배동 체육군 내배동 내로레스 대라 내동대라我是在那把明着话，没下雨天的是电动的啦，准备定个电动。아니 가가 띵게 더 가사게 띵게 내로 된동데라 무슨 나신게 나바 민자와 차야 코랑 가자까 잠지 메가 되 나바 차와 마도 아니 무슨 나신게 나바 민자위 차위 된 민자위 되레스 대 임바를 마도 제발 되나 품바 된동도 또와 되니지 아니 나부 된동도 때가 잡지 미자고 품바 된동도 또 로되게 아니 나부 된동도 또고 말이 가사 된동도 또落天你这个，俺碰不点没就多个嘛的，是我在这送过来的。看的是呢，碰不点动当，俺那不点动你了，落了车队干了，大家嘎边那把钱都落起来吃，我是哪些个那把明着我吃完没被退的，是。
So then here the explanation of that is that this very absence of being real, here the another name for emptiness, being devoid of being real, is the basic nature of all phenomena. However, it's not something that appears to the mind in some differentiated way, in the way that like a patch of blue and a patch of yellow, these things appear to our minds as differentiated in different, literally different aspects. The thing that appears differently, but the absence of things being devoid of being real, their emptiness, is a mere negation. So when that appears to the mind, it's nothing but a negation of the object of negation, and so it appears as a simple negation, not implying or producing a cognition of some other phenomenon apart from itself. So it appears to the mind in that way, and. However, so, however, from the point of view of inference, we can't say that that the understanding of the absence of something, take for example a pot and a cloth, as the bases for the emptiness here, or the absence of the things being devoid of being real, or another synonym for emptiness. That understanding that a pot is devoid of being real, that very understanding itself, does not
but then bet on my ranchi to a tomba, Rangon to a tomba chicken. But Rangon to a tomba to be low tigi, Kawarangon to a tobiloma can't say, Namuna Rangon to a tobilo in my
So that's when we're talking about inference then, and we gain an inferential understanding that like a pot is devoid of being real, is empty, then that understanding of the emptiness of the pot does not entail that one also understands the emptiness or the absence of being real of a cloth as well. We can't say that. The understanding of the empty, that a pot is empty, does not entail that we understand necessarily at the same time a cloth is empty as well. We can't present that in that way when we're talking about inference.
Oh yeah, that because there's the base and I'm do no tada benangi nagashinos. Kamba tada benangi nagam yana sebum down sergi pumba down and zai pumbani naga nyote and nugi china sergi pumbe sebum naga down. And zai pumbe naga sheva mando naga korana ngoiwa meba tobere but a katam mega can watch you by the walk. Kamba chigi nangata, kamba nigi kamnane, or kamba nigi nanga niwo de 캄바에 용게 나가니 내주 거네 아니 캄바에 용게 나가자 말은 나가 코랑라 토비라자 까tam지 아니 메가지만도 이와 메바나시체니 내 타대비 나자 나기 나가 신호서 따디 말에.
So an example that illustrates this is it's like the space that we find in different vessels. If you have a gold pot and a pot made out of clay, the space that exists within them, as space, is the same. But knowing that there's space within a golden pot does not entail that one knows that they're at the same time, or necessarily that one understands the space within the clay pot. Or if we take houses, if you have a couple of houses next to each other, there's space within each of the houses. The understanding that there's space within the house on the left does not entail that one understands that there is space in the house on the right. So the space itself is just like emptiness, and is often used as an analogy for emptiness, metaphor for emptiness, is a simple space itself is a mere negation, simple absence of obstructing some kind of something that one can come into contact with, the absence of that. But so in its basic nature or character, all space, whether it's in one pot or the other, or one house or the other, has the same basic character, but knowledge of one specific instance of that space within a particular locus does not entail knowledge of the existence of space in some other locus.
Oh yeah. What you tell me naga tomba shinos. That jiso sonam ji choko wa chaga sumba se ana jiso rangxin ji ma zhuba ma jiso denbe dongwa yin yang ani jiso meba men zhuo ba ani jiso jimbala sobe sonam chao chaba la dene ani dewu rang ge ani longje dang ani dendo jiwa la so tai ba yi zang ruwa tena jiso sonam ji choko wa sumba la 아니 가와요 말이 지소 라신이 매장 지소 매매줘 지소 덴발 매제 덴발 매매고와 인상 디순고 임베다 가메바니 최자 대신 시에 남지 토리 되바 남라 송 타바 되바 남라 타바 되는 라테니 매주 시에도 매주 코스 어디 나되기 가데 탐자 동바 이나 쉐 탐자 랑신지 동바 이나 아니 다 쳇던제 매고래 동바 인바 아니 방와 샤와 이노 제나 노래 그와 쳇데 선남다 차오 예수 뭐 지시나 어디다 지시나 가 메디 태권한이 또봐 당선이 전에 다르시 태권도 샤바나시 태권한이 또 면을 봐 대다라 태권한이 안에 땜땜바데 당선수 전에 지소지 쳐라 차바 지시셔봐 남이 아니 안주 지라 오래 안주 지라 안주 그 제대 안주 동 안에 나선 그 동안라 지바 지라 지시서 참고 민이비 토리 데바 나라 숨바 타바 데바 나라 토리 잠 텐도니와 테니장 나와 주나스 오야
같이 매pargiona 스틱 나와겨 디 패치 만타파 임포타 디 나와겨나 디 매pargio 가르로 고데 가르 디 마레 권한이 당연 시에는 지소지 쳐라 차바 디신시와는 안지 집에서 안주 안송 그 동안은 지라서 지시저 참고 고민이 봐서 지지 참고서 가라 지지라시 주바 고민이 비 토리 되바 남라 토리 온도 들어와 온도 삼이 고만돼 봐 데레베 마레
나 되바 남라
샴라 데니 강
대니장 나와
데니 강
토리 좀 텐도니와 대니장 나와 주나 토리 텐도니와야 요아레
겐데 페이지만 딱봐 페이지만 딱봐 이 매pargiona 매pargio
매바면도 대니장 나와 주나
라 겐디 페이지만 딱봐
가리라
춘레 make your shin to muchigyu.
가르쳐 대 가도
Di nangwa
토리 텐도냐와 텐이자 나와 주나세 드리
di
제가 가르도
pecha kyunyores kyunyore.
그 가르쳐도
Di
그냥 가르래
mepargyur. Deni kyang mepargyur.
텐이지 매바 아니 텐이지 텐도하지 토리 텐도냐와 텐이자 요하러와 토리 텐도냐와 텐이 요하러와 토리 텐도냐와 텐이자 요하러 나와 주나러와
Lame, then you make your shin to muchigyu.
내가 거야도 텐이자 나와 주나세 내가 매바세 두게
Di pecha kyunyore.
단 된주다 가라 토리 타바되바 남라 토리 좀 텐도냐와 텐이자 나와 주나 허나
So next comes a question. Here it says it's the seventh topic in this outline, and where it says that there's no contradiction in the Buddha's having taught that one needs to accumulate the mass of merit, collection of merit, from generosity and so forth. And this is given in verse 192. And it says that someone might raise the question, if everything is to be given up because of being empty, why does Sutra say that one should show respect and create merit? And the reply to that is that contradiction is not applicable here. There's no contradiction. The Tathagatas speak of attachment to practices, or here it says dharma practices, for those who want a high rebirth. That is disparaged for those who want freedom. What?
가선데 토리 되바 나나 숨바 세 타바 되바 나나 토리 점 텐도니와 텐이장 아니 토리 점 텐도니와 아니 매바 나와 주나 세베
No.
세베
Di nawa di dacha kyunyore. Di kyun
토리 점 텐도니와야 매바 주나
mepargyur. No.
되는 점들이 토리 점 텐도니와야 매바 주나 토리 점 타바 되바라 토리 점 텐도니와 매바 주나 세대들이라도
So thus, to those who fear, so the Tathagatas speak of attachment to practices, to those who want a high rebirth, but that is disparaged for those who want freedom, liberation. What need to mention attachment to other things, other forms of attachment? To those who fear bad rebirths and want a high rebirth, and who are incapable of meditating on the subtle production, disintegration of things, and so forth. Tathagatas speak of attachment to practices like generosity or giving, and they leave aside, for the time being, developing an understanding of the nature of reality. If such an aspiration for mere high rebirth is disparaged in those who seek liberation, what need is there to mention attachment to wrongdoing, to evil sorts of behavior?
So the
example, then it says further that if when one, within the contact or within the sphere of nirvana, all dharmas, all things, dharmas could refer to both phenomena or practices, are to be gotten rid of, then what needs to be said of non-dharma, anti-dharma, non-virtuous sorts of things and so forth?
양아래 되어 있어서는 내단이모 세비다 내단이모 남도래 대다 저와 동반이도 팀바 줄을 써야 돼 최담제 안에 가서냐 최지 인수 정말 최지 인수 세바세 나시세니 양아를 대외 인수 최남자 방와잖아 최면 받다시 매 예수 받다로
So where it says the sphere of nirvana, one can also understand that similarly is expressed within the sphere of phenomena or dharma dhatu, that all phenomena are extinguished.
나들이 변화 콜리지 자와 동시에 자와 총아 롱담바니 연로시기 다테 주지 제모람 다베 아니 덤베 메바시노 소나.
So the example or analogy that's given for this is when at the advent of a universal monarch called Shanka was being predicted, a monk prayed to be that monarch, for which the teacher, Lord Buddha, criticized him.
내밀에 태권하니 때와 차와 마인바당 태권하니 또왜 탑당 원나전에 때문에 거와당 태권하니 또 봐라 담배바 담바다 태권 대답권은 니와 냐데 톱 니바오 다 담보 뒤나네 내밀에 태권하니 때와 차와 마인이 소놈 대배 동반이 군제 접아 참 마인데 내민 가서래 내민내라 자유매 두도 좋아 마이남 어디서 그랬다 가자 동반이 또배 동아 타다 도나 다 동반이 동아 타다 도나 아니 태권하니 집어된 말에서 세나 아니 탑지 참 마담바 상호 동반이 집어된 말에서 세나 민데스 아니 가서 내지 개발을 되게 새로.
So next, there's a basic subject here is the stages of leading the disciple into the meaning of the way things are, the actual meaning of the way things are. Has 5 subdivisions. First shows that one should not demonstrate or teach reality to those who are not suitable recipients or vessels for it, and there's multiple subdivisions here, but we'll just go down to that. Here first comes the instruction, or that a verse which shows that one is not to teach this instruction on reality to those who are not suitable vessels for it or recipients of it, and this is given in verse 193. Here, well, someone might say, if all suffering is to be stopped by understanding emptiness, it would be appropriate to teach only reality, suchness. The answer, that is not so. And the verse here says that those who want merit should not always speak of emptiness. Doesn't a medicinal compound turn to poison when in the wrong case?
돈이 댐비 니들은 미루기 개발을 떼어 오래서 땐 돈이 댐바디 어느런 것도 잘을 떼어 이제 민데 니지 개발을 떼어 채로서 나 돈이 댐비 니들 미루기도 잘라 아니 돈이 댐바되지나 아니 통일주 쪽으로 통일주 쪽으로 해서 자와셔라가 난도 아니 가서 동반이라 따년나 셔러 충나 풍화주를 세대 다디가 송교사래라 이메일 동반이나 풍화주대 돈이 뽕아 주라 양나 탐제 여반 많이 베테 동반지 가서 동반지 그 텐데 아니 매비 텐도 거니 여반이 베테 동반지 텐도 거네 나선도 좋아 그래 세대라 네 선한 대바 동반이 꾸지 줘봐 참미지 내민내라 자예마 두두 좋아 많이 남 스타디 배대 올라 정야.
So thus, it's not the case that it's proper or appropriate to just teach emptiness in all the time, because it's the means by which one can eliminate all suffering. Understanding of emptiness eliminates all suffering, but even though that's the case, it's not proper to teach that, just solely teach nothing but emptiness, because this is contingent upon the differences within the recipients or the vessels for it. If one demonstrates emptiness to someone who's not a vessel for it or a proper recipient of it, it becomes the cause of their ruin. So this is exactly what's said in the basic verses of on wisdom by Master Nagarjuna, that if someone misapprehends emptiness, it will ruin them. Same thing. So some people, in some cases, when they hear emptiness, they'll think they'll disagree. They'll reject it. They'll cast away the teaching. They'll be ruined in that way by abandoning dharma in that way. Or some people will think, well, emptiness means that nothing exists, and understanding emptiness as meaning complete non-existence, total non-existence, then they'll go to the evil destinies.
Oh yeah. 인제전 심지어 제수 준비 선언 되베 아니 단도 네도 로문이 그 동 아니 네라 마다바 동반이 네 마다바름 아니 가서 뒤끝이세 저바차와 말이세라 저바차와 많이 선언 되베 동반이 군지 저바차 민데스 저바차와 만데스 내 마음반 조위 내 마음반 자리 내 전부 로심바 이양 땅나 투도 주와 민남디 아니 투도 주와래.
So then, thus, that being the case, someone who has compassion and wishes to, for themselves, gain the merit of taking care of sentient beings, it does not talk about emptiness all the time without examining whether or not the people to whom this is going to be instructed are suitable recipients or vessels for the instruction on emptiness. It's just like that one doesn't give a medicine. The medicine can be extremely powerful. It can be even tasty. It can have a nice taste to it. But one doesn't prescribe that for people, patients for whom it's inappropriate. Because if they take it, even though it's a powerful medicine, it can kill them. It can cause them to be destroyed, become poison for them.
Oh, 내가 자유매 도도 좋아 많이 남 세대체, right? 아니 다디 배라 도시월 채비 도 아니 도단데베 세와라 소바 대다기 아니 도시와 채비 아니 매 아니 도매 받아 땅에 아니 대사바단 세바나시리 소소.
So it's the example that's actually given in the commentary here is that, for example, there's a medicine. There are medicines which are designed to as antidotes to poison, but if you give that medicine to someone who hasn't taken poison, it can kill them.
Oh yeah. 다 뒤에 대랑내라 안에 탑지 차지 그러나 탑지 차 때는 지속 그다음 전에 뒤 제수 동반이 때문에 너들웅디 잠바 아니다 아니 동이 때기 림바디 반대 말고지 기자 걸라 천신도 담보고 되네 아니 천신도 림바 텐신도 담보 지소 담이지 담보 지발라서 담이 전에 뒤 제수 아니 섬나 레바 니게데 되네 취니 거와제 아니 동반이 그때 어떤나서 와 거와제 봐 지송보다 내 땅에 아니 당신이 주비 어떤데 돈이 내도 룸으로가 내 땅에 안에 내rum라 안에 땅고 그래 소인지래.
So then there's a verse which is cited from the Master Matracheta, and it says, Master Matracheta says, just like cloth, which is stainless, that's what one applies color to if one's dyeing cloth. So first, by means of the instructions on generosity and so forth, one makes the mind of the recipient to become prepared properly into a proper state, and then teaches. Then one should, here it says literally, should anoint them with the Dharma. One should infuse them with the Dharma. So the Dharma, the line where it says make the mind of the recipient here understood to be in a good condition. First, one has to employ all of the method side of the path to engage in generosity and so forth, the practices of generosity, to prepare the mind of the person who's going to hear instructions on emptiness, make the mind fit for that, and then one should infuse their minds with the Dharma here. Dharma refers to the instruction on emptiness. So just as Master Matracheta says, one should, a teacher should examine the disciples to see if they're suitable vessels or not.
Oh yeah, that 태권하니 또비 탑텔라. 이와 태권하니 또비 탑니 시달라로 개sen지 송원민이 티신도 지den바에 마도바 지den 송원 뉴마인 아니 다텔라 가르송어레서나 토마 지den바나나 차비 시단에 오다 tum바 담바 차데시 지den라 차버기 차바나신 제게 아니 가서 니지지 지den라 소와其他元素几点了差不哪些蛋白差点其他那里改善的接受生活民主主义那里个改革按你接受生活民主主义让个改革蛋白差吧提醒度让个按你有改革蛋白差吧提醒度几点把它差别按你尽把它出征他得从尊重了讲这个事，请把他出征了所有我落当参把，接受过缺德的我落当参把，他妈蛋白差的是
So then the next point is the method by which one induces the disciples to understand reality. And the verse here says, just as one is unable to help barbarians by means of some other language, just like that, without employing the things of the world, one's not able to help or take care of worldly persons. So here at the very beginning, at the outset, one needs to instruct worldly persons in a manner that is in accordance with things as they're understood to exist within the world. Worldly beings, worldly persons have to be taught in a way which accords with the way things are understood to exist in the world. The example for that is like a barbarian. You can't do anything to help out a barbarian by means of some other language that they don't understand. You have to employ the dialect that they speak. And just like that, one has to teach them, instruct them in their own language. And so just like that, one needs to, at the very beginning, at the outset, instruct worldly people in the Dharma in accordance with things that accord with their own ideas, their own thoughts, things such as generosity and so forth, which are commonly known within the world.
Oh yeah. 他点了，工作我其他两把几点把也马多把，这洗，我为那路看了点了，他被洗，俺那工作个那路的，其他点把他几点把也马多把。几点把你，俺那团那边到把了，团那边到把了，送俺们民警， 인장 돈이 된라 배바라 강도 대관이 된라 바바 시대 야방에 우레스 주발에 타냐 된바 타수 주와당 단단 된바 타중 주와대 세대 시 아니 내로 된라 배바 시대 아니 타냐 된바다 마도발라 시디 딩게 내로 단단 된바다 또 두고 말해 이라 자시름 나라야 타냐라냐 마대바 담비 되니 또 없는 줄로 담비 되니 만도나 양한다고 톰문 줄세다 대치바 임바래 타냐라냐 마대바 담비 되니 또 없는 줄세 대당 타냐대바 탑수 주와다 되는데바 탑중 주와대
So now, thus, one needs to instruct things in accordance with the way things are phenomenally seen to exist. Here, just as an aside, I'm using the word phenomenal for kunzop. It's often translated as conventional, and I'm using conventional for tanye, which is often translated also as conventional, but I think the two have to be distinguished, so I distinguish them in that way. And the word phenomenal for kunzop is extremely problematic term, and using phenomenal to represent that is a compromise that I'm using. So one has to, without worldly people understanding an instruction which is in accordance with the way things exist phenomenally, then worldly beings are totally unable to apprehend and to gain an understanding of ultimate reality, and they can't do it. So this is exactly as it's explained in the introduction to the Middle Way, that here it says that conventional reality serves as the method, and ultimate reality arises out of that method. So the same thing is expressed in the basic verses on wisdom, where Master Nagarjuna has said that without instructing people in phenomenal reality, there's no way to understand ultimate reality. Ultimate reality is contingent upon a phenomenal reality. One has to, first of all, establish things as they exist conventionally, and then once that's been established, then one can determine what their final nature is, what their ultimate final nature is, their emptiness, that is their ultimate reality. But without first establishing the conventional reality of things, their phenomenal way things appear and so forth, there's no way to instruct one or to gain an understanding of their ultimate reality.
我也写写把它工作上路了开了呢，等等等把桥我送的他就看他就那写那这也有钱，别那求许怒该许怒，俺那该嫌弃，俺那团该嫌了的呢，俺那团框得去嘛，你把那些人
So the conclusion of that point is that thus one has to take within our own system here the phenomenal things, and then by having taken these phenomenal things just as a sort of given, then one instructs one in ultimate reality. That sequence has to be followed, and so the example here is that it's just like a baby. Or it's an infant who understands just basic language, learning language. There's no way to make them understand things by using some more other language other than the language they know.
Oh, yeah, that. Oh, I want not to know. Thank you. Some of them are ribi kwa nazo bi kwa na temba kwa wa sena ana tap dan zo kwa na temba kwa wa yue dan me dan ni ga me shi dan ja de ne ji wang ge tan ja de man shi ju ma yin na se da yue dan me dan oh ji dian su yue ta su den bei se 다 가서 매바다와 빵이 치도 안에 두잖아 탐자 여가 대당 아니 여바다와담 다다도 여바다나 자나 지지 인생 방위 치도 아니 대만 매바담바담 탄예비시와 리시지 농어 소소다 되네 와 탄예주지 그 참음 전원주지 그 참음 야나 탄예비시와다 리시지 농어 소소다 되네 여바다 매바 동반이 따고 리시기 농어라 리시기 신이 시비생活 여바다 탄이 어르와 대 가소래 군주의 전화 리시기 신이 시비생활 매바 리시기 탄예비 시와다 리시기 농어라 소나 여바다 매바 돈이 탄예 리시기 신이 시비생활 돈이 여바다 아니 탄예비 주체다 매바다 예매지 타를 다와 니가 양세다 로와 랑시 여와 다와 그 타다당 때나 매바 다와 니가 밤에 치도 체다 때나 매바 다위 체다당 랑시 여와 다위 그 타다 니가 밤에 치도 오 예매 니가 담아 주와 미시 세장 땡데 Yeah.
So next comes the way in which the necessity of teaching this in various ways, necessity of teaching reality or emptiness in various ways. So both existence and non-existence, and existence and non-existence, and neither existence nor non-existence, all of these four alternatives are taught. It's just like the way medicine is, we give the name medicine to things in accordance with the various illnesses, various sicknesses. Isn't that the case? That's what the verse says. And then, so as a method for taking care of or to nurturing worldly beings, the teacher, Lord Buddha, for disciples that need to get rid of the wrong view that things are totally non-existent, those sorts of disciples, he taught that everything exists. Here we can understand everything exists as meaning that things are real, they exist as they appear, or that there's a real self, and so forth, the real existence of a self. And then for some others, in order to get rid of their misapprehension of things as being real, Lord Buddha taught that things are not real, that they're non-existent as they appear. They appear naively to us as being real, and they don't exist in that way as being real. And then in addition to that, he also taught 탄예비시바당 릭시길
탄예비시바당 릭시에서 탄예비시바를 군도도에 참아들라 탄예비시와체 릭시에서나 효과는 유도에 로데라 제바당다 ten고란도 릭시체 다 롱고 소소는 되는 여바다 매바세지 아니 가서래 릭시기 모여와당 릭시기 춘이 시비 생활 여바니를 개봐야 하래 자, 리시기 모르 군자 좀 여쭤보래. 리시기 천이 시비 생활 군자 매봐. 리시기노 농어라 때나 여바다 매봐. 세가 리시기 뭐 아니 군자 리시기 천이 시비 생활 아니 군자 매봐.
So then he also taught both existence and non-existence. And here the teaching of both existence and non-existence is from the perspective of two types of cognition. Here there's conventional awareness, and then there's also awareness which comes about as a result of reasoning and investigating the final nature of things. So from the perspective of these two forms of awareness, regular conventional awareness, from that perspective, one can say that phenomenal things exist, but from the perspective of the specific perspective of a cognition which is the result of an investigation, a rational investigation of the final nature of things, one would have to say that phenomenal things don't exist. Now, here we have to be careful because if we're talking specifically about this cognition, which it comes about as a result of a rational investigation of the final nature of things, we have to say that phenomenal things exist for that, but they don't exist for that awareness from the perspective of that rational, that sort of awareness's vision of the final nature of things. That is, that sort of awareness is cognizing the emptiness of the thing. So from the perspective of that, its vision of the final nature of that thing, emptiness, then the phenomenal thing doesn't appear to it. But we nevertheless have to say the phenomenal thing does appear to that awareness as a base for the emptiness that it's cognizing. So one has to be able to make that kind of differentiation. And then even with respect to conventional kinds of awareness, emptiness or that is the phenomenal things that conventional awareness is aware of, their emptiness is also there, but it doesn't appear to a conventional awareness because it's not, conventional awareness is not examining or looking for that, that emptiness that's there. And then as far as the final alternative, the both let's see, existence and non-existence, and then you mean nika pangwich ngabo yume nika
re tanya bi xiewa dang re xie gi long so so la ya ba de ma sa zhan ni duo gun zuo bi qie nam tanya bi xin wo ye re xie gi long wo ye xie ba dang tanya bi qie nam re xie gi qing yi xie bi xin wo me ba 都讲了这个的，是吧？要把当，他那边写我的这些议论我了，对对，要把他没把汤子，原本就他打完你帮你70岁的，原本个他说的，让些要把他带来没别个，他打完你个帮你70，我原本你个的，但把出明显讲带的是，
对，他那边写不了，要不当没把你个啊。 他那边写
我当这些给弄我了，但呢，这些给弄我了，工作比缺那么，他那边写我呀，有这些给弄我有。这些跟我有，这些比学你是比生活要嘛的嘛的，没啥的学你是比生活没吧？哦，这家伙的嘛的，这些我没把它咱这个嘛但是
你他那边写不了，
他那边写我当这些给弄我工作比缺的大。 他那边写为是我来有，这些给弄我来有，他那边写我的这些给弄我了，对那有把的钱，没把的工作为钱那么这些给生意是比生活没把的没把。
So then we have to make that distinction then with respect to that awareness, which is the result of this analytical or rational investigation of the final nature of things. We have to say that from the specific perspective of that awareness's vision of the final nature of things, seeing the it's called the vision of dharmata, the final nature or reality of things, their emptiness, then we have to say within that specific perspective, phenomenal things don't appear. There's no, they don't exist even within the perspective of that vision of the final nature of things. But we have to say that nevertheless, the phenomenal things exist for that that awareness. They do exist, but they don't appear. They're not seen within the perspective of that specific cognition of the final nature, or dharmata, or final nature of things. That distinction has to be made, or else there's a big problem of there's a big problem. So here then, so thus the final alternative there is that by getting rid of both the view which sees things as the extreme view that sees both the existence of things or the non-existence of things. Here, the view that also, you make it tawa nika pangwichu.
Or you may type Dawa Niga as a Ranshiji Yabaki, Tawa, Ten and Meba Tawa, Tasha Tiny teacher.
No. So then the final alternative there is that the Buddha also teaches that the existence and non-existence of things both are not established as real. That's for the purpose of getting rid of both of the extreme views, both extreme views, which view things as either existent. Here, existent has to be understood as meaning existing by means of their own intrinsic nature, or the extreme view which sees them as being non-existent, which is that they don't exist in any way whatsoever. So Lord Buddha teaches all four alternatives at different times. We'll stop there for now.